Sick Chicks. This is Ellen Jones.
Hello.
Sick Chicks, for those of you who don't know, is a series I am kind of doing when I get around to it. Yeah, we have one episode a year, so in which I discuss illness and gender and the experience of ableism with people.
I'm a person.
And a sick and a gender.
Oh yeah. Those
so
things.
we're
all those things.
checking all the
bases.
What I should do is I should always do these videos from the bed of the person I'm interviewing because it's kind of funky and
Yeah.
I mean,
always.
mental health isn't really bed related so much, I don't think, but...
No, although you do spend a lot of time in bed.
So first question is always, what is wrong with you?
I have bipolar type 2 and I have autistic as well. And I found out both of those things at the same time, which is a fascinating combination.
My goodness.
To have both a mood disorder and something which affects your ability to process feelings and emotions.
Yeah, wow. That must have been a really intense day. Like,
yeah. The interesting thing is I wasn't seeking an autism diagnosis.
Yeah.
I knew there was something very wrong with my mental health in kind of like a mental illness type way.
Yeah.
But I wasn't seeking mental, like an autism diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Whereas like many people that I know spend ages trying to get diagnosed with it, especially as women. But I just had a psychiatrist who was going through my history very thoroughly and went, so were you diagnosed with autism when you were younger? I went, what makes you think I'm autistic? And he went, you know the ways you are and the things that you do.
Would you be able to just kind of define in any kind of vague way like what autism is? Just because I always assume that people know what everything is, but they might not.
Basically my brain is literally, the phrase wired different is contentious, but basically the way my brain is different to a non-autistic person's brain, and it means that I have differences in the way I socialise, in the way I perceive the world, and in the ways that I kind of interact with the world.
How did you go about getting a diagnosis, and did you find it difficult?
So, interestingly, I think to have had the easiest time getting a diagnosis is getting the help that's the hard part. My mental health has been bad for many, like probably 5 years now. I went to a doctor's appointment and they checked my blood pressure, as they do, and they were like, are you anxious? And I was like, no. And then this doctor, and she was really good, and she basically just like realised very quickly this very bad stuff was wrong with my head. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you can self-refer for mental health stuff. So I went home, self-referred, and put all my problems in a Word document, emailed it to them, and I got a call being like, will you do like different levels of assessment? So the idea is everyone comes in at the same, and then you work up and get more and more niche support.
Okay, wow.
Depending on what you need. I got escalated to seeing a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is the one that suggested the autism. I got the bipolar diagnosis 2 weeks after that first psychiatric meeting. And the bipolar one is quite a big deal. The way that bipolar is considered and treated is much more different to, for example, just like unipolar depression. It's definitely considered it's always seen as more extreme. I have like periods of very severe depression followed by like periods of like hypomania. I don't have full mania, so like I don't have full ups like people have. Yeah. But I have things where basically like everything feels too fast. It's like, you know when you're hyper as a kid like that, but like permanently for like a while. Okay. It's like you feel great, but like it's also kind of bad because everything else is so slow and it makes you very agitated and it's not particularly pleasant. Mine isn't that severe. Like I've never been hospitalised and I've never had it's had ramifications on my life, but they've never been extreme. Someone could be just as extremely unwell with something that's considered more standard.
Yeah, well, definitely, yeah.
But like that's not the way it's perceived.
But also there's kind of that catch-22 of like mental health, especially in young people, especially in like young people who are like perceived as female or whatever. If it's something like depression or anxiety, it's almost not taken seriously because like you have to deal with the stigma of like it being common and therefore not taken seriously. But then like if it's anything else, then it's suddenly
extreme. Like, also like my mental health is very much like to do with like my experiences like coming out and the fact that I had like a lot of like horrible stuff happen there, and like that is definitely like a part of my mental health picture. Mm-hmm. And actually finding a team that treats me as someone who's got a lot of stuff going on, and who understands that like I'm a person, I'm not a set of diagnoses, has been like the hardest part. I've just moved teams because I moved moved to London, and I had a meeting with a doctor who I left so angry. Really? Well basically he came in having never met me, had just seen my records, and basically came in with this agenda of trying to tell me that all my diagnoses were wrong and that he was going to try and diagnose me with BPD.
Wait, just for everyone, just say what that is.
Borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
Because also, and I said to him, you know, autism in girls is frequently misdiagnosed as BPD, right? And he went, oh no, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, so this is really interesting. So like, I remember being at GirlCon, where we met actually, and someone was talking about how like, because in our society, and maybe, I don't know intrinsically, who knows, like women tend to be more like emotional and empathetic, like we're kind of raised to be more, have that kind of very high social intelligence or whatever, like as women, and then men are sort of trained to be less like that. But do you find that like, autism and being is like extra difficult, or there's specific difficulties where everyone kind of thinks, okay, so you're a woman, so therefore you must understand all these like subtle emotional cues.
Yeah, I think so. And also like the thing we know is that autism in girls and like people who are like kind of socialised as girls presents very differently. And like also a lot of the research that we have for like autism generally is based on young white cis men, like, and boys. And so if you don't fit into any of those categories, it can be very hard to get diagnosed because people don't recognise even what autism looks like in you. So interestingly, one of the first things they asked me was like, when you were younger, were you obsessed with pink?
Okay.
Autistic girls are generally very hyper feminine. They tend to be like obsessed with classical mythology, horses, or like...
No way.
Yeah. And this is like on the like National Autism site, like these things.
This is fascinating.
Like hyper feminine, obsessive about celebrities and things like weather, which is why we suspect certain members of my family are, because they are like that, they're obsessive. But most autistic women have this ability to mask. It's one of the reasons that diagnosis can be difficult to do, like not even just on like we don't recognise it, but actually the diagnostic tests can be difficult because you don't know if they're masking or if they actually know what they're talking about.
Because I mean, women are and people who are raised to be women or whatever are so socialized to perform like emotional availability.
Like you wouldn't know that I can't read facial expressions. The way I've described it in hindsight is that one of the reasons like I'm doing everything on manual, what you're doing on automatic. Unless I told you, you'd never know. You probably notice because I stim quite a lot, and also I get very overwhelmed by like different environments.
Yeah, but even like there's so many things like that I wouldn't necessarily consider like or note to be autistic traits. Like you were saying to me earlier on about food. Yeah, how you get overwhelmed by flavour. I think that's really fascinating. And like textures in particular, so I don't like avocados or any mushy soft texture. I think the way like the media portrays autism is like very shy and very clever. Yeah. So that's kind of what you're told.
And I was like, I am the very clever part, I'm not gonna lie. But like I am.
Nice.
Do you know what I mean? Like I left my school with the highest grade in the year. I was always very academic. And my brain functions very well that way. The food thing's interesting because so when I was younger I had some basically horrible things happen, and I started doing things like not eating, or I had developed some very like kind of restrictive behaviours around food, and I think most people will look at that and go, that's like an eating disorder type thing. I went down to eating like a very few number of, but only chocolate hobnobs, or only pears.
Yeah, wow, okay, yeah.
Or during my A-levels, tins of pineapple. And what that is it's like a way of like, food and stuff is overwhelming.
Okay.
So you make it like, and that's like a very common autistic thing, but unless like you have an understanding of the fact I was autistic, it would look like I was doing something that was like disordered. And
well, it was disordered, but not in the way.
Yeah, like I think I definitely, you know, like I think most people have a weird relationship with food, but like what I was doing was very clearly to do with like everything being overwhelming, and so me trying to have like, something bland.
Thin or anything.
I mean that too, but like that's a whole nother thing. But like that wasn't the aim of that, if that makes sense.
For those of you who don't know, you kind of a boss. I think it's quite interesting. Like I have a lot of questions about like how you
manage.
Well, yeah, because you do like a lot of activism around very personal things about like LGBT stuff and also mental health. So like because those two things are probably quite like emotional, like homophobia is very personal as a concept, and like mental health is very personal. So like how do you talk about these things whilst also like self-caring? But before you answer this question, explain what you do, because I've just really confused everyone.
I am a campaigner and creator, and I do a lot of work with LGBT plus rights, mental health, disability stuff, and also like general feminism, other things. Lots of like, it's all interrelated, isn't it? And I do things like I've been on the Guilty Feminist. I speak at panels and events up and down the country. I'm also like a second year university student.
You also have bipolar disorder, so like
I also have bipolar disorder. You've seen like my work over the last year.
Yeah.
It was also the worst mental health period I ever had, not because of what I was doing, but just because like I had a very like triggering incident like this time last year, and it messed me up for about, I remember 5 months of last year, like impressively done.
Yeah.
My work is the one thing that I'm able to do even if I'm not able to do anything else, so you'll often find that I'm doing what I need to do even if I'm not like feeding, clothing, washing myself properly, which is not the way I advocate doing it, but for me, but like it's not.
Maybe don't try this at home.
Maybe don't try this at home.
Like, it's not the audience that I think would be stressful, it's just like having that boundary between your work also being the thing that's difficult.
Like basically when I was came out, I had like homophobic death threats for about 18 months, and it was all horrible from people who knew me in school. And I had like a mental health team that basically probed me about that in a mental health assessment, like probed, and it was very clear that I was uncomfortable. And I was fine, I left, and I was fine for 2 days, and then I had a complete breakdown, the likes of which I've never seen, because I think for 5 years I just didn't deal with it. And it's interesting, because like I obviously talk about these things that have happened, and I've gotten very good at like basically packaging my trauma into something, and then like turning that into content. And that's, I've got a video that's coming up very, very soon, and should be up by the time you watch this, which is basically about like creativity and like burning yourself out. Like I am working on that, like trying to work out how to be something that's kind of more than just like vomiting back trauma.
But even the fact that you feel like you have to put that in your work is like a little bit problematic as well.
Yeah, and like to be fair though, like I think it wasn't problematic to start with. I think it was genuinely me wanting to do. I didn't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad place to come from. I think because of kind of the media reception to my work, I'm the perfect sob story. The bullied gay child becomes nationally recognised queer campaigner.
Yeah, yeah.
I am the perfect story in that sense, and that's like something that people like to focus on. What I'm doing now, especially in my work, is if you look at the things that are most recently being talked about, it's nothing to do with that. And I think it's, you know, better for everyone all around, because like I feel like, you know, if I'm able to go to a panel and I'm not scared of what I'm talking about, then I'm going to do better than if I was like stressed about the content. I was on The Guilty Feminist, and before that I'd never really talked about queer stuff on a panel that was fun, and I went on The Guilty Feminist and just made a joke about scissoring. Like,
yeah, sure, and like the imposter syndrome must be really intense because you're so like young and like all these spaces.
Goodness gracious me.
Yeah.
Like it's really difficult. you were saying about my aesthetic that it's kind of business, but like not. That is my whole thing.
That's kind of how you dress. Like you kind of dress like I'm a business person, but you wouldn't really understand what I do.
I don't understand what I do.
So with all of this, and with the whole fact that like your whole story is kind of like a rags to riches of like gay rights story in a way, like it's very much like.
You could write a musical about me.
I'm not going to do that.
I will write the musical.
Write it yourself. Like, do you think it's difficult because, like, as you said, like last year, even though it was like peak success, it was also like a really difficult year for you?
Yeah.
Like, do you think it's difficult, kind of people like assuming that because things are going well in your career and everything that you are then well? Like,
people assume that I have these diagnoses, but they don't actually impact me, and that I'm well all the time. And I think it's only the people who like live with me that really get it. Or like see my private Twitter that really get it. There be demons here. Like there be demons. There be demons. There's obviously some things that are really hard about being autistic, and it's not those things that are hard about being autistic. It's like the world.
Yeah.
Makes it hard. Hashtag social model. In some ways, like having autism and bipolar, like kind of, I don't think I'd be able to do it if I didn't have it. Autism makes me obsessive. In some ways, like I wouldn't know what my brain would be like without it, and it's one of the things that's really enabled me to be like myself. Like I mean, because I've had it since birth, I don't know what it'd be like without it. The thing about bipolar disorder, okay, the depression part is not good. The hypomania, oh my god, you know how much I get done.
Do you think learning to like slow down a bit in your activism when you're going through a bad spell would be
helpful?
Like
I am like starting to do that. I think like also for me, like I've got to accept that they're inevitable. Like the ups and downs are very inevitable, and I kind of have a life that, so although I'm doing a lot, like there's a lot of flexibility in what I do because I'm running the whole thing. Yeah. It's when I have to, the thing that scares me is when I have to go to a job, like a proper job, like a 9 to 5, and that will never work for me. So that's why I'm kind of trying to build this little portfolio career, so that when I'm out of uni and into the real wide world, like I have the flexibility to have a life that is going to not be bad for my health.
I was thinking about, I know I bring this up all the time, but the Frida Kahlo documentary.
Yeah.
Biopic, because it's this. Sort of when she's talking about being an artist, she isn't like, look, lol, painting is so fun and I want to do this because I want my creativity to be expressed. She literally is like, I can't walk now, I need to become a painter because I can't do other stuff. And I think it's really interesting when I meet like very chronically ill or like disabled creators who like, not only are they creative and they want to do creative things, but they actually have to. Like we like cannot work 9 to 5. We just
the 9 to 5 will never work for me. And also, like, if you look at the unemployment statistics for autistic people, I think there's also a lot of confusion because autism comes with other like if you've got autism, you've got a higher chance of being comorbid with like other conditions, like either learning disorders or like even mental health conditions. Interestingly, because I'm bipolar and autistic, but because I'm autistic, I haven't been able to access treatment for bipolar disorder. If I hadn't have been autistic, I could have accessed treatment significantly faster, because, do you know what's also more ridiculous? If you have autism, your bipolar is one of the most likely mental health conditions.
Oh my god.
If you've got issues understanding moods and feelings, you can understand why bipolar would happen more likely. If you've got problems with socialising, you can understand why anxiety, you know, it's very obvious that you should probably have like comorbid mental health conditions.
Let's just finish with 3 bullet points.
3 bullet points.
Which 3 things would you like people to know about bipolar disorder and autism? Like, do you think that people should just like take away from this and then just like tell people and, you know, not be wrong about it anymore?
For both of them, what you probably think about them is wrong. I think there's a lot more diversity and nuance to the experiences than what the media and general presentation of the conditions would have you believe, particularly on like a gendered level as well. 2, access to treatment, not treatment for autism, but there are things that can help you if you're autistic with like like there's avenues you might want to go down. They're really impossible to get hold of, and diagnostic. I was really weird in that situation. Getting diagnosed is really hard, and we need to make that much more accessible. And similarly with bipolar treatment, it's really hard. Thirdly, can we just like fund all that stuff properly and give them, and also like not just funding the systems, but making the systems more coherent in the sense of like there's so little flexibility, and like if you've got comorbid conditions or a health condition or something else, like if you're basically a person with more than one thing wrong with you, it's impossible to access treatment. And can we campaign for more of that?
Where can they see you?
youtube.com/Ellen Jones, twitter.com/Ellen_Jones. Come find me.
And can they see you in real life anywhere coming up soon?
I'm going to be speaking at Lexicon if that's happening in November. I'm also speaking at some more events that haven't been announced yet, so I will let you know.
Cool. Okay, thank you so much for coming.
You've come to my house!
That's true, but you come to my bit of the internet.
True.
So you can check out another video of the Ellen channel.